You didn't stumble on this video by accident. There's a reason your soul paused here. Not your mind, not your curiosity, your soul. Because deep down, beneath the noise, the failures, the confusion, something inside you has been crying out. And maybe no one's heard it. Maybe you've been carrying guilt like armor, walking through life like a ghost of who you used to be. You smile in public, nod when people talk, go through the motions. But there's a silence inside that no one sees. It's the silence that comes after sin, after regret, after 100 failed attempts to get it right. It's the silence that whispers, "You've gone too far." That somehow this time, you cross the line. But listen closely. In that silence, there's another voice, quieter than shame, deeper than regret. It's not yelling from a distance. It's not demanding performance or apology. It's near, near like breath, near like a whisper in the dark room. And that whisper, it knows your name. Not the version of you the world applauds, not the edited, filtered version you show online. It knows the real you, the one who's tired, the one who's scared, the one who wants to believe again, but doesn't know how. This voice doesn't come to accuse you, it comes to find you. Shame has a way of filling every room inside you. It doesn't politely knock on the door of your heart. It barges in, sets up camp, and starts broadcasting lies on full volume. It repeats every mistake like a relentless echo. It doesn't whisper your failures. It declares them like headlines. You knew better. You did it again. God's done with you. Over time, its voice becomes so familiar that you stop questioning it. It begins to sound like your own thoughts, like your conscience, like truth. You start to believe that your failure isn't just something you did, it's who you are now. Shame has this sinister way of welding your identity to your worst moment and convincing you that you'll never be anything else. When you lie awake at night, shame doesn't sleep. It replays the scenes you wish you could erase. It amplifies the words you shouldn't have said, the things you shouldn't have done, the choices you regret. It tells you that what you've broken can't be repaired, that the distance you feel from God is permanent, that you've finally crossed the invisible line of grace. And because it sounds so personal, so internal, you don't even realize that it's not God speaking to you. Shame is a counterfeit voice. It's persuasive, emotional and familiar, but it's not holy. It tries to speak with authority it doesn't have. And here's the dangerous part. If you let shame speak long enough, it doesn't just accuse you, it shapes you. You start living like someone unworthy of forgiveness. You pull back from prayer because you think God's tired of hearing from you. You stop worshiping because you feel like a hypocrite. You avoid spiritual community because you think you don't belong. Slowly, without even realizing it, you retreat into isolation, and shame becomes your constant companion. It doesn't even need to shout anymore, because it's already shaped the way you see yourself. But there's a voice that cuts through that noise. It doesn't scream to compete. It speaks with a quiet authority that makes everything else lose its power. It's the voice of Jesus. It doesn't echo condemnation. It speaks identity. It doesn't point you backward. It calls you forward. When shame says, "You've ruined everything," Jesus says, "I've already redeemed it." When shame says, "God's done with you," Jesus says, "I will never leave you or forsake you." When shame says, "This is who you are now," Jesus says, "This is not where your story ends." His voice doesn't deny your sin, it disarms its power. The cross is proof that God isn't intimidated by what you've done. If your sin was strong enough to silence his love, the cross would have failed. But it didn't. Jesus faced every possible weight of sin and shame and still declared, "It is finished." That wasn't poetic language. That was a legal verdict. Shame wants to keep you in a courtroom where the trial never ends, but Jesus already walked in, paid the price, and closed the case. The reason shame feels so loud is because it thrives in secrecy and silence. But the moment the voice of truth enters the room, its volume drops. When Jesus speaks, he doesn't argue with shame. He overrules it. His voice is not frantic or harsh. It's steady, unyielding. It doesn't need to justify itself because truth doesn't need to explain. And once your spirit recognizes his tone, everything else starts to sound false. Shame wants you to think that God's voice only comes to the clean, the strong, the faithful, but that's not when he speaks the loudest. His voice often breaks into the room when you're at your lowest, when you've given up trying to fix yourself, when you've run out of excuses. That's where he speaks the clearest, because grace doesn't need your perfection. It meets you in the mess. So if shame has been yelling at you, telling you that you're too far gone, listen again. Beneath the noise, there's another voice. It doesn't need to shout. It carries the authority of the one who made you. It says you're still mine, not because you earned it, but because he chose you before you fell, and he's not changing his mind now. Shame is loud, but God is louder, and once you tune your heart to his voice, shame loses its power to define you. You're not too broken to be found. You've convinced yourself that you are the exception to grace, that somehow the arms of God reach far, but not quite far enough to wrap around you. Maybe it's because you knew what you were doing. Maybe it's because you thought you had overcome that weakness, only to fall again. Maybe it's the frequency, the repetition, the hiddenness of your struggle that makes you think this time it's different. This time you've gone too far. But I want you to lean into this next truth like your soul depends on it, because it does. You are not too broken to be found. Not now, not ever. Brokenness doesn't disqualify you, it locates you. Because the presence of God doesn't avoid the places that are shattered, it is drawn to them. Jesus is not afraid of your cracks, your flaws, or your mess. In fact, the places you've been trying to hide are often the very places he wants to enter. And not to shame you, but to redeem what shame tried to bury. You might think he can only use the strong, the polished, the consistent. But God specializes in building with broken pieces. Your past isn't a wall between you and his purpose. It's the material he uses to construct the testimony that sets others free. We live in a world that discards what's damaged, but God is different. He kneels down in the dirt of your life, brushes aside the debris, and sees treasure where others saw trash. You might be surrounded by silence right now. You may feel like your prayers are bouncing off the ceiling, but that does not mean God has left you. Sometimes silence isn't absence. It's the pause before resurrection, a sacred hush before the miracle. Remember this: Jesus was never drawn to the people who had it all together. He sat with the outcasts, the ashamed, the sinners, the forgotten. He didn't come for the clean. He came for the ones who thought they'd never be clean again, the ones buried under regret, the ones weighed down by addiction, the ones haunted by their past. And every time he showed up, something shifted. He didn't require perfection to extend his hand. He just needed honesty, humility, a heart cracked open enough to say, "I can't do this alone." That's where he meets you. Not at the finish line, but in the fallout. In the middle of your mess, when everything feels too heavy to carry and the world has turned its back. That's when his presence comes rushing in, not to judge, but to restore. He's not waiting on the other side of your healing. He steps into the middle of your chaos and says, "Let's heal this together." That's what makes his love so different, so holy, so powerful. You are not invisible to God. He doesn't look at you and see failure. He sees his child. He sees potential. He sees a story that's not over yet. You may have wandered, but you're not lost to him. You may have fallen, but you're not forgotten. You may feel broken beyond repair, but in his hands, brokenness becomes beauty. There's a reason you're still breathing, a reason this message found you. It's not coincidence. It's not just another video, it's a divine interruption, a reminder that you're not too far gone, that His grace didn't run out the last time you sinned, that His mercy didn't expire with your last mistake. His arms are still open, His voice is still calling, and His heart still beats with love for you. So stop hiding your wounds. Stop believing the lie that you have to fix yourself before you come back. Come broken, come tired, come messy. Just come. He's waiting. And when you finally let Him in, not just to the parts that look good, but the parts you hope no one ever sees, you'll realize you were never too broken to be found. You were always within reach, always wanted, always loved. His presence is not earned, it's given. You've been carrying the weight of your shame like it's part of your identity. You've been trying to perform your way back into God's presence, reading more, praying harder, pretending stronger, and yet deep down you still feel distant, like God is near everyone but you. But listen carefully now. His presence is not a paycheck for your good behavior. It's not a reward for your righteousness. It's a gift. A divine, undeserved, freely given gift. You don't have to earn what was never meant to be earned. You just have to receive it. Grace does not operate like the systems of this world. This world makes you prove yourself. It measures your worth by your productivity, your consistency, your performance. But Jesus came to flip that all upside down. He doesn't say, get yourself right and then I'll show up. He says, invite me into the mess, and I'll show you what love really looks like. That's what makes the gospel so radical. It's not about climbing a ladder to reach God. It's about a God who climbed down to reach you, even when you weren't reaching back. You may have failed, you may have fallen, but His presence hasn't changed its address. It still shows up in the middle of regret. It still whispers in the middle of silence. It still covers you in the middle of storms. God is not intimidated by your inconsistency. He is not withholding His love because you haven't been good enough. If that were true, none of us would ever know Him. His presence is not a prize. It's the place you belong. So stop trying to perform for God and start being with Him. Stop believing that you have to clean up to come close. Jesus didn't come for the perfect. He came for the lost, the weary, the burned out, the ones who cry alone at night and still show up the next day with a fake smile. That's who He came for. That's who He still comes for. And His presence doesn't demand that you fix everything overnight. It simply asks that you stop running. Maybe you think that if you were more spiritual, more disciplined, more worthy, then you'd feel Him more clearly. But let me tell you this, you don't need to feel Him to be filled by Him. You don't need goosebumps to be guided. Faith isn't about feelings, it's about trust. And sometimes the most powerful moves of God happen when you feel absolutely nothing. When you sit in silence and still choose to believe that He's with you. That's when heaven takes notice. The enemy wants you to believe that your mistakes disqualify you from God's nearness, that your past is a permanent stain, that your lack of perfection pushes God away. But here's the truth. Your sin does not scare Jesus. Your weakness does not disgust Him. He doesn't flinch at your failure. He already saw it coming, and He still chose the cross. Not so that you could impress Him, but so that you could dwell with Him. God's presence is not for the elite. It's not for the ones who have it all figured out. It's for the desperate, the honest, the ones who whisper, "Help me," with trembling lips. It's for you, right now, right here. And you don't need to jump through spiritual hoops to get to Him. Just be still. Just breathe. Just say His name, not with fear, but with trust. Because He's already closer than you think. He's the God who walks into locked rooms, the one who shows up on the shore after you've denied Him, the one who breaks bread with failures and washes the feet of the flawed. He's not asking you to be enough. He's asking you to let Him be enough for you. And when you finally lay down the lie that you have to earn His love, you'll start to experience the peace that only His presence can bring. So come, just as you are, not because you've earned it, but because He already paid for it. His presence is yours, not tomorrow, not next week, but now. Let go. Let grace catch you. Let his voice remind you that you belong, not because you proved yourself, but because you are his. Always were, always will be. You're not too far gone. He's still coming after you. You've been convinced, maybe by others or maybe by that voice in your head, that you've gone too far this time, that you've crossed a line that can't be uncrossed, that what you did, what you thought, what you let happen has finally made you unworthy of God's love. But let me remind you of something eternal and unshakable. There is no distance you can run that grace cannot reach. There is no mess too big, no heart too hardened, no past too dirty that can scare Jesus away from pursuing you. You might think he's disappointed, that he's walked away, that he's given up. But that's not who he is. He's the kind of shepherd who leaves the 99 to chase the one who wandered off, not to punish, but to carry you back on his shoulders with joy. Yes, joy. Not shame, not resentment. Joy. Because that's the heart of the Father. A heart that aches when you're far. A heart that celebrates the moment you even think about coming home. You haven't ruined your purpose. You haven't canceled your calling. You haven't burned the bridge to your destiny. You're not that powerful. The blood of Jesus didn't just cover little sins or honest mistakes. It covered everything. Every failure. Every fall. Every dark night that you thought disqualified you. Every silent cry. Every secret shame. The cross didn't leave your worst day out. It was poured over it, sealed with love that doesn't expire. And I know what you're thinking, but I knew better. So did Peter when he denied him, but I kept going back to it. So did the woman caught in adultery, but I feel numb now. So did Elijah under the tree. You see, Scripture is not a book of perfect people. It's a book of broken people restored by a perfect God. And he hasn't changed. His pursuit hasn't stopped. He didn't stop calling your name just because you stopped listening. He didn't take his eyes off you just because you looked away. He didn't stop choosing you just because you chose something else. He's still coming. This isn't about you finding your way back to him. This is about letting him find you where you are, in the rubble, in the silence, in the confusion. He's not waiting for you at the altar of your perfection. He's walking into the wreckage of your now, right here, right now. And all he needs is your surrender, not your performance, not your plan, not your promise that this time you'll get it right. Just surrender. Just one honest whisper of, God, I need you. And that's enough to open the floodgates of mercy. Don't buy the lie that he's tired of forgiving you. Don't believe the voice that says you've worn out your welcome. You're not a burden to him. You're not a project. You're his child. And he never stops being a father, even when you stop acting like a son or daughter, even when you run, even when you rebel, even when you're too ashamed to pray. He still waits. He still watches. He still runs when you turn toward him. And when he gets to you, he won't bring a lecture. He'll bring a robe, a ring, a celebration. Because heaven doesn't count how many times you fell. It celebrates every time you get back up and start walking again. It's not about perfection. It's about pursuit. And guess what? He's the one who's been pursuing you all along. So if you've been hiding, come out. If you've been pretending, let the mask fall. If you've been running, stop. You're not too far gone. You're not disqualified. You're not hopeless. You are still loved, still chosen, still worth coming after. And he's already on his way. Let him in. Let him carry you. Let him remind you that he never left and he never will. He saw it all and still said, "You're mine." Before you ever took your first breath, he already saw it. Every choice, every failure, every hidden addiction, every night you swore you'd change, every promise you broke, every prayer you couldn't finish because the shame choked the words. He saw the ugly parts, the dark corners, the real version of you, the one that no one else knows. And still, he looked at all of it and whispered, "You're mine." Let that sink in. This isn't blind love. This isn't ignorance. He's not in love with a filtered version of you. He's not deceived by your highlight reel. He doesn't love you because of who you pretend to be. He loves you despite everything you're afraid of someone finding out. That's the difference between the love of the world and the love of God. The world loves what looks lovable. God loves you through what makes you feel unlovable. Somewhere along the way, religion may have told you to clean yourself up before coming to Him, but the gospel was never about that. It's not about presenting a polished version of yourself. It's about bringing your pieces to the one who never asked you to be whole without Him. God doesn't love potential. He loves people, broken people, wounded people, ashamed people, addicted people, and He doesn't love you less when you struggle. He leans in closer. You've been trying to earn what was always a gift. You've been exhausting yourself trying to work your way into belonging. But He already said, you belong. Not because you got it right. Not because you were strong enough to resist, but because He is love. And love isn't just something He does. It's who He is. He can't not love you. He sees the scars, the cracks, the stains, and still calls you worthy. Even now, He's not asking you to explain yourself. He's not demanding an apology or a justification. He's asking for your heart, not the fixed one, the real one. The one that's bruised from trying to hold everything together. The one that feels numb because it's been broken too many times. That's the heart He wants. That's the heart He already claimed. When Jesus went to the cross, it wasn't with a list of your accomplishments in mind. It was with the weight of your sin and the power of His love strong enough to carry it all. This isn't a love that walks away when you mess up. This isn't a love that needs convincing. It's a love that bleeds, a love that stays, a love that shows up in your lowest moment and says, I'm still here. You don't have to beg for His attention. You already have it. You don't have to fear His rejection. You're already accepted. The shame that whispers you're too far gone, it doesn't stand a chance against the blood that was shed to bring you back. And maybe you feel like you've ruined everything, like you've hurt people, lost yourself, like your story took a wrong turn and now there's no going back. But God isn't limited by your detours. He's the only one who can write beauty into the chapters you thought were beyond redemption. He's the God of the comeback, the God who resurrects what everyone else buried. And yes, that includes you. So stop hiding, stop hustling for worth. Stop carrying what He already died to set you free from. His arms are still open. His voice is still calling. His grace is still reaching. And He still says, you're mine. Not just when you're worshiping, not just when you're strong, not just when you're finally doing better, but right here, in this moment. With every mistake and every scar, He saw it all and still chose you. You don't have to run anymore. Let Him hold you. You've been running for so long, haven't you? Not with your feet, but with your heart. Running from the guilt, from the memories, from the version of yourself you wish you could erase. You've worn so many masks that sometimes you forget what your real face looks like. You smile in public, cry in private, and whisper silent prayers, hoping God hears you through the chaos in your chest. And deep down, all you've ever wanted was someone to just hold you and say, you don't have to carry this anymore. Here's the truth you've been avoiding. You don't have to run anymore. Not from God, not from love, not from the pain that still wakes you up at 3 a.m. The Father isn't waiting with crossed arms. He's waiting with open ones. He's not disappointed. He's not angry. He's not distant. He's right here, in this very breath, whispering, let me hold you. We've been taught to believe that love is conditional, that people leave when you show them your wounds, that you only deserve affection when you're at your best. But God doesn't operate like that. His love doesn't evaporate when you fall short. His grace isn't scared of your relapse. His presence doesn't pull away when you're too broken to pray. In fact, that's when He leans in the most. Maybe no one ever held you when you needed it. Maybe your tears made people uncomfortable. Maybe your pain made others walk away. But God is the one who kneels beside you in the dirt, puts His hand on your trembling back, and stays. He's not intimidated by your mess. He's not waiting for a perfect apology. He wants your permission to simply be near, to sit with you in the silence, in the sobs, in the shame. And when you let him, something shifts. Not all at once, not in some loud, dramatic way, but in a whisper, in a stillness, in a warmth that fills the places inside you that have been cold for far too long, because you were never meant to heal alone. You were never meant to figure it out by yourself. You were meant to be held, to be loved, to be safe. It doesn't matter how far you've drifted. It doesn't matter how many times you've promised to do better and failed again. God isn't keeping score. He's keeping the door open. And every second you spend running is a second you could spend resting. Resting in a love that doesn't flinch when it sees the truth. Resting in arms that never get tired of holding you. Resting in a presence that speaks louder than your regrets. Maybe the reason you're tired isn't just because of life. Maybe you're tired because your soul is homesick. And no amount of success, distraction, or validation will ever fill the ache that only God was meant to satisfy. You were created for communion, not performance. For love, not perfection. For connection, not constant self-correction. So breathe. Just breathe. You're not disqualified. You're not too far gone. You're not a disappointment. You're loved. You're seen. And you are held right now in this moment. Not by your achievements, not by your strength, but by the one who never let go, even when you did. You don't have to outrun your past. You don't have to pretend you're okay. You don't have to keep pushing people away out of fear. They'll see the real you. The real you is the one Jesus died for, the one he calls worthy, the one he's been chasing not to punish but to embrace. Let him in, let him hold you, let him remind you of who you are when the noise fades and all that remains is love, because you are not alone. And you never were. You were never too broken for redemption. Somewhere along the way, someone convinced you that you were too far gone, that what you did or what was done to you had marked you permanently, that you were damaged goods, forever defined by your worst day, your biggest failure, your secret shame. Maybe they didn't say it outright, but the looks, the silence, the rejection, it all screamed one thing: you don't belong here anymore. And the worst part? You started to believe it. You believed the lie that grace was for everyone else, that redemption had a limit, that restoration was a reward for those who didn't mess up that bad. So you settled, you stopped hoping, you stopped praying bold prayers, you stopped dreaming, you told yourself to just be grateful you're still standing, and you buried the parts of you that still longed for healing, joy, and purpose. You wore survival like a badge, but deep down, you were still bleeding. But hear this. Jesus never agreed with that narrative. He saw it all, every fall, every wound, every ugly cry you thought no one witnessed. And he still said, I want you. Not reluctantly, not out of pity, but out of relentless, intentional, scandalous love. The kind of love that walks into your prison cell, throws the chains to the ground and whispers, let's go home. God isn't looking for polished versions of you. He's not waiting for you to fix it all before he embraces you. He's the God who chose the cross knowing full well what you'd do with your freedom. And he still said yes, not just to salvation, but to relationship, to intimacy, to walking with you day by day, wound by wound, until what once defined you becomes a testimony of impossible grace. Your past doesn't intimidate him. Your questions don't scare him. Your moments of unbelief don't offend him. He's not keeping you at arm's length. He's not tolerating you. He's chasing your heart with the fire of heaven because he knows what he placed inside you before the world ever tried to distort it. You were never too broken for redemption. You were always the reason for it. The enemy's greatest tactic isn't temptation, it's shame. Because shame convinces you to hide from the very God who came to heal you. Shame tells you you're disqualified. But grace shouts louder, you're called. Shame reminds you of what you did. Grace reminds you of what Jesus did. And when you finally stop running and sit at his feet, raw, messy, undone, you discover that his presence is the safest place your soul has ever known. There is nothing you have done that his blood didn't already cover. Nothing you feel that his spirit can't comfort. Nothing you've broken that he can't rebuild more beautifully than it was before. But you have to stop disqualifying yourself from what Jesus already qualified you for. You have to stop letting shame write the final chapter of a story he's still redeeming. You are not what happened to you. You are not your addiction. You are not your darkest thought. You are not your mistake. You are not the label someone else put on you. You are not your trauma. You are not too late. You are not too much. You are chosen. You are seen. You are still wanted. And yes, you are still redeemable. So come back, not to religion, not to pretending, but to the arms of a Savior who never stopped calling your name. Come back to the voice that cuts through the noise of accusation and softly says, I never stopped loving you. Let him rewrite the story. Let him rebuild what was torn down. Let him remind you that even the most shattered pieces can become stained glass windows in the hands of a master artist. What was meant to destroy you will become the very thing he uses to deliver others. That's what redemption does. That's who Jesus is. That's what grace was always about. The sound of redemption is not always loud. Sometimes we expect God's voice to thunder. We wait for the heavens to shake, for the room to glow, for some undeniable sign that he's near. But what if the loudest move of God in your life is actually found in the silence between your sobs? What if the moment of your greatest healing doesn't come through a shout from heaven, but through a whisper that meets you exactly where you are? You see, when your world falls apart, everything around you gets louder. Criticism, fear, regret, anxiety, opinions, condemnation. They scream, they echo, they multiply. And in that chaotic volume, it becomes harder and harder to hear the voice that matters most. That's when shame wants to convince you that silence means absence, that God must have walked away, that if he were near, you'd feel him, that if he still loved you, something would have changed by now. But that's not the truth. God has a history of whispering. He whispered to Elijah not in the wind, not in the earthquake, not in the fire, but in a still, small voice. He whispered to Moses in the backside of a mountain, through the gentle flame of a bush that wasn't consumed. He whispered to Joseph in dreams while he slept in a prison cell. He whispered to the woman caught in adultery as he stooped low to write in the dust. He whispered to the thief on the cross through a promise that paradise was still within reach. Heaven speaks, but it often doesn't yell. And maybe, just maybe, that's because God wants you to draw closer. He doesn't need to shout over the noise of your life. He waits until your heart quiets enough to listen, not because he's distant, but because intimacy lives in the whisper. Anyone can hear a voice in the crowd, but it's the one who leans in close that hears the secret. And you, my friend, have been invited to come closer, in your mess, in your doubt, in your fear, in your weariness. When you can't even lift your hands to pray, when you feel like your faith is barely a flicker, he draws near. Not with a rebuke, but with a whisper, I'm still here. Not with condemnation, but with comfort, you're still mine. Not with shame, but with grace. Let's begin again. We tend to associate God's presence with dramatic moments, but the truth is that some of his most powerful moves happen in what feels like nothing, in the space where you finally stop performing, stop pretending, stop striving, and just sit, just breathe, just be. That's when his voice gets through, not to impress your ears, but to heal your heart. The sound of redemption isn't always a roar. Sometimes it's the soft inhale when you finally believe you're forgiven. Sometimes it's the crack in your voice when you dare to sing again. Sometimes it's the whisper of hope after years of silence. And sometimes it's the sacred stillness that fills the room when you realize you're not alone. He's not measuring your progress. He's not comparing your process. He's not waiting for you to catch up to someone else's timeline of healing. He's just whispering, consistently, faithfully, patiently, until the noise fades and the truth rises again. You're not too far. You're not too late. You're not too broken. You're not too silent. You're exactly where grace can find you. So be still. Let the whisper work. Let the quiet become holy. Let the moment you thought would break you become the moment you finally heard him for the first time in a long time. He's whispering now. Can you hear it? Even in the silence, heaven is moving. There's a sacred frustration that comes with unanswered prayers. A deep ache that settles in your chest when you've poured out your heart to heaven and the only response you get is silence. You check your phone, hoping for a word, a confirmation, a miracle. You refresh the pages of your life, desperate for change, searching for signs. But nothing changes. And in the waiting you start to wonder, did God hear me? Is he ignoring me? Did my sin build a wall too thick for his love to reach? That silence, oh, that deafening silence, can feel like punishment, like distance, like abandonment. And that's exactly where the enemy whispers louder. See, he's not coming. You messed up too much. You waited too long. You broke the final straw. But that's not what your Father is saying. That's not what heaven is doing. Because silence is not the same as absence. Waiting is not the same as rejection. God is not like people. He doesn't go silent to punish. He goes silent to prepare. He goes silent because what he's doing in the unseen is more important than what you're asking to see. Heaven is not ignoring you. Heaven is working in the dark. Think of the seed buried deep underground. It's surrounded by darkness, covered by soil, forgotten by sight. But in that dark place, something holy is happening. Roots are digging, foundations are forming, life is starting, quietly, invisibly, powerfully. And when the moment is right, that seed breaks through the surface and reveals what was growing all along. That's how God works. While you're crying in your room, he's rearranging the pieces of your future. While you're wondering if he left, he's aligning people, timing, opportunities, and miracles to meet you in the exact place of your need. He's not ignoring you. He's positioning you. He's not disappointed in you. He's developing you. There are answers coming that are too big to rush. There are doors being crafted for your calling that haven't even been installed yet. There are healings happening inside you that you didn't even pray for, because God knows what you truly need. And the silence, it's not empty. It's sacred. It's strategic. It's proof that something holy is unfolding behind the curtain. So don't mistake this season of quiet for abandonment. Don't let the enemy turn the silence into shame. Instead, let it become your sanctuary. Let it become the place where you choose faith even without feedback. Let it become the moment where trust isn't based on results, but on relationship. Because faith that only stands in the harvest is fragile. But faith that endures the drought, that leans in when heaven is quiet, that keeps showing up with cracked voice and weary heart, that kind of faith changes everything. That's the faith that shakes hell. That's the faith that gets heaven's attention. God hears every whisper of your soul. He sees the tears you don't tell anyone about, and he keeps every promise, even when you've forgotten how to hope for them. So keep going, keep praying, keep believing, even when it feels like nothing's happening, because in the silence, heaven is moving. Shame never had the final word. Grace there's a reason the enemy works overtime to trap you in shame. Because if he can get you to believe that your mistake defines you, he knows you'll stop approaching the only one who can redeem you. Shame is loud. It echoes in your thoughts. It disguises itself as your identity. It tells you you're not just someone who failed, you are the failure. And once that lie takes root, it doesn't just damage your self-esteem, it paralyzes your purpose. But God never called you by your shame. He never labeled you by your past. He never turned his face away when you stumbled. In fact, Those are the very moments when His grace gets louder. When Jesus knelt with the woman caught in adultery, He didn't throw a stone. He didn't deliver a sermon on her flaws. He drew in the dirt, lowering Himself to her level to remind her she wasn't alone in the mess. And then He said, "I don't condemn you." That voice, that gentle yet thunderous grace, is still speaking today. Over your guilt, over your secret sin, over the chapter you haven't told anyone about. Jesus isn't shocked by what you did. He's not pacing heaven, wondering how to fix your mess. He already made the way through it. He already wrote a redemption plan before you even fell. You see failure, He sees future. You see the fall, He sees the return. That's why grace is so offensive, because it doesn't wait for you to be clean to come close. It meets you in the mud. It wraps its arms around you while you're still dripping with regret. And it whispers what shame never could: "You're still mine." Religion may have told you that you need to earn your way back to God, that you need to prove you're sorry enough, holy enough, disciplined enough, but Jesus already carried the weight of enough. You don't earn grace, you receive it. You don't clean yourself up first, you come broken. And when you do, the embrace of heaven doesn't hesitate. Your sin didn't scare Jesus away, it drew Him closer. Your wounds didn't disqualify you, they're the reason He came. And your shame? It's been nailed to a cross that doesn't condemn, it resurrects. So let the voice of grace be louder than the voice of guilt. Let the presence of God wrap around your pain and silence every lie that told you you're too far gone. You are not your worst moment. You are not your biggest regret. You are not the sum of your struggles. You are loved. You are chosen. You are pursued, even in the middle of your mess. This is the kind of love that doesn't flinch, that doesn't walk away, that doesn't change its mind. And once you hear that voice, once you really let it in, it changes everything. Not just how you see God, but how you see yourself. You're not defined by where you've been. You're being refined for where you're going. And the same God who met you in your shame will walk you all the way into your destiny. He's still writing your story, and it's not over here. You may have convinced yourself that this is where it ends, that after what you did, after what happened, after how long you've been stuck, the story is over. The dreams feel out of reach. The joy feels like a distant memory, the connection with God, quiet, cold, and somewhere along the way you stopped turning the page because you thought the ink ran dry. But let me tell you something that no storm, no sin, no setback can ever erase. God is still writing. The author of your life doesn't abandon unfinished books, and He doesn't scrap entire stories because of one broken chapter. He specializes in plot twists, in turning ashes into beauty, in bringing resurrection to what everyone else buried. You thought the heartbreak was the conclusion, but God sees it as a comma, not a period, a pause, not a full stop. Just another setup for the redemption He's already planned. Look back for a moment, not to dwell, but to remember. How many times did you think that was the end? How many seasons felt like they had nothing left to offer? Yet here you are, breathing, walking, listening. That's proof enough that grace still has its pen in hand. And if God was done, you wouldn't still feel the tug. You wouldn't be here now, searching for a voice that sounds like hope. Some chapters are dark, some are lonely. Some feel like failure has won. But even those chapters, especially those, are necessary. Not because God causes the pain, but because He wastes none of it. He uses what the enemy meant for destruction and repurposes it into testimony. The addiction, the betrayal, the loss, the silence, all of it can be rewritten into something that glorifies Him and restores you. But you have to keep turning the page. You have to believe that the current paragraph isn't the whole story. That your identity isn't locked inside yesterday's mistake. That your calling wasn't cancelled by a moment of weakness. The cross already covered that. The blood already redeemed that. The mercy of God is new this morning, and it came with enough grace to cover every regret, past, present, and future. Don't you dare close the book yet. Don't hand the pen to despair. Let the one who formed you, called you, and never stopped pursuing you keep writing. He's not finished. And this mess you're in right now, it might just become the most powerful chapter of all, the one that shows how God met you when everyone else left, the one that reveals how deep his love runs, the one that draws others back to hope because they saw you make it out. You see ruins, he sees restoration. You see a dead end, he sees resurrection. You see a failure, he sees a future filled with grace and glory. Let him finish what he started. Let him write the comeback. Let him speak life where you only see loss, because in his hands no story is ever too far gone. And yours is still unfolding with divine purpose and eternal promise. You're not too far gone. He still calls you by name. There is a voice that knows every detail of your story, every scar on your heart, every hidden corner you try to keep covered. And still, it calls you, not with condemnation, not with shame, but with a gentle whisper that says, "Come home." You are not too far. You are not too broken. You are not disqualified. Jesus still calls you by name, the name he gave you before the world ever called you anything else. The world may have labeled you with failure, with shame, with titles that came from moments of weakness: addict, liar, unworthy, unwanted. But those names are not your identity. They are not how heaven sees you. They are not how Jesus sees you. He sees the child he formed with intention. He sees the purpose he planted in you before your first breath. And even if you've walked away 1,000 times, he still stands in the same place, arms wide open, calling you home. Somewhere along the way, religion may have taught you that your sin disqualifies you from grace, that you need to fix yourself before you come back, that you need to prove your worth before you can be accepted again. But Jesus never said that. Jesus never required perfection. He just asked for surrender. And that surrender doesn't start when you're whole. It starts when you're broken. You may be sitting in a mess you created, surrounded by consequences that feel too heavy to carry. You may have burned bridges, pushed people away, or lived in a way that no longer reflects who you want to be. But God's grace doesn't run out because you reached your limit. His mercy doesn't expire because you've messed up more times than you can count. In fact, it's in those exact places, the ones you hide, where his love moves the most. Remember the story of the prodigal son. He rehearsed his apology. He believed he had to earn his way back, but the father saw him from a distance and ran to him, embraced him, restored him before he could even finish his confession. That is how Jesus responds to your return. Not with a list of conditions, but with a robe, a ring, and a celebration. Because what was lost is found. Because his love was never based on your performance, but on his promise. Even if your heart feels numb, even if you've prayed and felt nothing, even if the guilt feels louder than God's voice, he is still calling. He hasn't turned away, and he hasn't changed his mind about you. He still has plans for you. He still wants you. He still delights in you. And that whisper you feel deep in your spirit, the tug you can't explain, that's him. That's Jesus saying, "I see you, I want you, I love you. Come as you are. No one else can take your place in his heart. No one else can fulfill the calling he placed on your life. And even if you've delayed, even if you've resisted, the invitation still stands. Because grace doesn't give up. Love doesn't walk away. And Jesus, he's the kind of Savior who enters your story at its worst and rewrites it into something beautiful. So come home, not when you feel holy, not when you feel worthy. Come now, in your weakness, in your questions, in your brokenness, because he's already made a way, and he's still calling your name. Let this be your moment to come home. Maybe you didn't expect to find this video today. Maybe you were just scrolling, trying to distract your mind, numb your heart, or escape the chaos around you. But here you are, still listening, still breathing. still holding on to something, even if it's just a thread. And that thread, it might just be the voice of Jesus gently whispering, "This is your moment." Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, not after you've figured everything out. Now, right here, with everything still messy, with your heart still carrying the weight, with tears still burning behind your eyes. This is the sacred space where heaven meets you, not because you performed, but because you paused. And in that pause, something holy is happening. There's no music dramatic enough to capture the sound of your soul being called back to life. There's no lighting perfect enough to imitate the light that begins to rise when you finally say yes to Him again. But heaven sees it. Angels lean in. God smiles. Because your return is no small thing. It shakes eternity. It shifts the atmosphere. It rewrites stories. And you are the story that He never stopped writing. You may still feel unworthy. That's okay. His love never depended on your worthiness. You may not have the words. That's okay. He hears the ache behind the silence. You may be unsure of what comes next. That's okay. He doesn't require your roadmap, only your hand. Just reach, just whisper. Just breathe the name Jesus and He'll fill in every gap. And maybe for the first time in a long time you'll feel it. Not lightning bolts, not fireworks, but peace. A peace that silences shame. A peace that makes you cry for reasons you can't explain. A peace that finally tells your soul, you're safe, you're home, you're loved. Let this moment mark a new beginning. Not because everything has changed around you, but because something changed in you. A softening, a surrender, a return. You've been fighting so hard to hold everything together, your reputation, your faith, your mind. But maybe today is not about holding on. Maybe it's about letting go and falling into the arms that never stopped being open. So let this be your prayer if you need one. Jesus, I'm tired. I've tried to do this on my own. I've made mistakes, I've run, I've doubted. But I still believe you haven't given up on me. So I'm coming home. Not because I'm perfect, but because I know you are. Meet me here, heal what's broken, speak what I need to hear, and let your presence fill every empty place in me. I'm yours. And if you prayed that, even in your heart, even in silence, know this, all of heaven just erupted in celebration. The lost has been found. The voice in the wilderness was heard. And grace has the final word over your life. This isn't the end of your story, it's the turning point. So breathe, cry, sit in the quiet if you need to. But don't leave this video without knowing one thing. You are still chosen, still seen, still pursued by the only one who knows everything about you and loves you anyway. Jesus never walked away. He was waiting. And now, He's walking with you again. Let this be your moment. Let this be the day you never forget. You're home now. If you need more messages like this, or if you feel this could help someone else who's tired, lost, or running, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Save it. Let this message echo beyond your screen. Someone else is one whisper away from coming home too.